right. Hey, sis. Today we're talking about the kind of courage you don't always see. You know, the kind you feel in your chest before you make a decision that could change everything. Well, I'm joined today by my sister, Reverend Evelyn Bourne, and she's going to share her courage conversation with us today. So, Evelyn, tell us, what courageous decision did you feel the most risky to make at the time?
Well, thank you, Joy, for having me and for asking that question. And so I was thinking about it, and you know, I don't know if this is actually courageous, but I was raised by a very conservative, strict mother, and we were homeschooled, and we were also under a lot of, I'm just going to say, thought control from the church and from her. They were different but similar. And I had a very curious mind. I was very from the time I was little, very curious. And again, we were homeschooled, and it got to the point where I wanted to go to college. And because I didn't go to high school, I
Mm.
worked through those years that I would have been attending high school as a teenager. And I felt very enclosed in a restricted environment. And so I wanted to see the world, and I wanted to go away to college because I wanted to learn out from under oppression. Might sound like a dramatic term, but out from under that oppression and just be free to, you know. So I did. Because I had been homeschooled, I had to get my GED in order to apply to the university. So I my mother took me to the high school that I would have attended, where in the same interview with the principal, he enrolled me so that he could unenroll me so that I could take the GED. So I didn't have to wait a year to take it, because if I waited till I was 18, I could have done it without the whole interview and all that. But in order to take a GED where we were living, which is in Oregon, you had to have a release from compulsory education. So yeah, so we went to the principal's office and we filled out a form as if we were enrolling, and then he filled out another form to unenroll me. And then I went to community college, and then I went off to university. Now I had my own car. I didn't get any help from my parents, not a thin dime of help from my parents, or even interest or support. I packed up my little, it was a Datsun, a turquoise blue Datsun.
Wow.
And yeah, I packed that with my stuff and I drove myself to college. And I enrolled
Wait,
myself.
wait. Hold, stay right there.
Okay.
Because that's a moment.
Yeah.
That's a big, bold move right there. What did that feel like?
Well, if I had known better, I might have been a little bit more nervous. Because I didn't realize the whole thing about like going off to college. Typically, your parents will drive you and they'll come to the dorm and help you unload. And then, I was just like, I had gone to the university to enroll myself. I just drove up there. It was about a 4 hour drive from my home. And so I had done the drive already before. I knew where I was going. And I just packed the car and I said, bye. She was like, see ya. My mother had no idea where I lived. She never came to the house where I moved in, to a house with four other women. And it actually, side story, it was a house that was a Black Panther house, and there was still bullet holes. There was still bullet holes in the front wall, but I digress.
Okay.
Um, so I moved in with four other women, three other women. I'm sorry, three other women and a young man. Another story. But yeah, on my own. So I drove up and I got there about 4 days before classes started. So the campus was empty. And I walked around. This was the University of Oregon. And I walked around and there was no one around. And I just was started to I was like, was this a smart decision? Like, I don't know anyone. All of a sudden, it all came to me what I had done. I had never
Mm.
lived away from home. I was in a place that I'd never been. Well, I mean, I had been to the admissions office. That's it. So I'm walking around the campus and I just had like a little baby nervous breakdown because I was like, what have I done? But then I was there. My stuff was there. My car was there. And as people started to come onto campus and, things started and I started to meet people, but I was just such a sheltered, naive, foolish girl. But that
So,
was the thing that I did, that to break away from my mother, from being under her thumb, almost literally,
mm,
and being under her control, and to just be out in the world free. And I just had this thirst for learning. And so that's why I did it. I said I have to take this step, or I could see myself still here in this spot at 24 years old living with my mother.
mm, wow, wow. Let's take that in. So you have weighed this versus that, staying behind or moving forward.
Yeah,
That's
there was
heavy.
no option. Yeah, there was no option for me. Um I knew that there was no way that I could. I mean, she didn't want us to study about dinosaurs. So I was fascinated by, oddly enough, I was attracted to the things that the church didn't want. Like, they don't want you studying mythology because, oh, guess what? Anyway, they didn't want you studying mythology or about dinosaurs. And, um, they also don't want you learning about, what's the evolution.
Oh,
And I was fascinated by these things without really realizing that they were forbidden, until my mother was like, no, you don't need to be worrying about that mythology. That's a bunch of hooey. So, yeah, it's like I felt like there was this cloud over my head. It was keeping me from learning about what I wanted to learn about. So I got out.
was there? This is mind blowing. I'm almost rendered speechless by someone that was bold enough to, after not having attended high school, formal high school, to then to decide you wanted to go to college. That is courageous.
I
Um,
knew, I knew I wanted to attend college. And when she took I'm one of four. And when she took my siblings and I out of school, I was in seventh grade. I finished part of seventh grade. So my formal education, and it was private Catholic school that we went to. So my formal education ends around, midway through seventh grade when she pulled us all out of school. I thought, if you take us out of school, how am I going to go to college? That was my thought at that age. Like, yeah. So I knew from back then. And it was interesting because my uncle was taking one of his nephews, one of my cousins, went to the University of Massachusetts, and he drove him up with his stuff in his car. And so he said, you want to ride along with us? I said, sure. I was about 8. I was about 7 or 8. And I rode out to UMass with them. And it was the first time I had been in a dormitory, because I grew up near Harvard University and near Boston University and all those places. I'd been on college campuses. I mean, Massachusetts is
okay.
colleges everywhere, but it's the first time I like went in. So we went into the dorm. We carried his stuff up and down this, and I saw all the kids and all that, and I was like, I want to go to college, even though I had no idea what it was. So since I was a kid, I knew that was something that I was going to do, and I was determined.
I definitely you were because you went to college. Now, let me ask you, was there anything along this journey that started sound like from a very young age that almost stopped you?
Um, almost stopped me. No, because I was determined. I'm a Taurus. I am a Taurusy Taurus. So people call it stubborn. I call it determination.
Okay.
I was determined to get out from under my mother, and I was going to say parents, but really it was my mom. My dad was just coming with whatever, and they divorced shortly thereafter because my mother was sort of like a wrecking ball,
Mm.
and I knew that if I wanted to have any kind of life, I had to get out from under that. So because I had been working, I got my first full-time job at 14. Because my mom taught us to sew. I had been sewing since I was in first grade. So by the time I was 14, I was making my own clothes.
Mm.
My sister and I were making our own jeans.
Wow.
We were tailoring. Yeah, I was by 14, I knew what I was doing. I knew my way around a sewing machine. And so my mother met this couple that was running a company out of their garage. They were making quilts and selling them. This is actually still in business.
Wow.
And they ended up in conversation, and they knew my mother sewed, but my mother already had a job. And they said, let us know if you know of anyone who can sew, because we're looking for another seamstress. My mother said, oh, I have a daughter who sews. And so, yeah, so I had a full-time job. So all that to say, I had money. Now, I mean, my older sister and my mother had us contribute to that rent because my mom, it was basically, anyway, my mother moved the four of us with her across the country to Oregon without my dad's permission. So he said, you take my kids away, I'm not paying child support, which I think on his part was not great. But so my older sister and I worked full time to help my mother cover all the expenses.
Okay.
So, but I did get to keep some of it, and I saved it. So I had money. I paid for my parents didn't give me one penny towards tuition. So I bought, my sister and I went in together to buy the car. And then when I turned 16, she was 18, and she bought her own car, and she just gave me the car that we went in together. So that's how I ended up. I only had to buy half of the car. So yeah, I had money because I had been working full time. And even though I was contributing to the household expenses, I was socking my money away. So I paid
Wow.
my own tuition. I paid my own upkeep, because we were living in a private house right at the edge of campus. So it was technically off campus. So yeah, I was paying rent
Mm.
and buying groceries and going to college and all that on my own. So
Wow.
yeah, nothing, I can't think of anything that came, any sort of obstacle, because I was a wrecking ball too, right? I was determined. I said, for my own sanity and safety, I have to extract myself from this situation, because um, I can't see myself living my life that way.
Right. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Now, looking back, what did you learn from that experience?
Um, I learned I learned that my determination could get me where I wanted to go. People have said, "Oh, you're so stubborn." Again, like I said earlier, it's just determination, right? I learned that I can take my life in my hands. How old was I? Was I 20 yet? I was 20. Yeah. Um, because, I had already been, helping my mom pay, because I have two younger siblings and one older sibling. So between she and I, my mom, we covered, all of our living. So I was very much familiar. You have to pay for the rent. You have to pay for gas. You have to pay for lights. You have to pay the phone bill. Like, I knew all those things at a very young age.
Yes.
And so I felt that gave me confidence in um, going out on my own, because I knew I could do it, because, I found a job immediately when I got to campus. I found an off campus job, and I had a work study job. So I was taking 18 credits and working 2 jobs. I still don't know how I was doing that, but I was taking 18 credits. And yeah, so that's determination. So
That's a,
yeah, what I learned is when I put my mind to it, I can get it done.
that's important. That's an important piece of weaponry to have in your arsenal of survival. So, what would you say to a woman facing the same decision?
I would say have a plan because I didn't go blindly. I had a plan, and you know, actually ending up on campus was the culmination of the plan. But I had started way back where I was like, okay, do I want to wait until I turn 18? Because then I also once I got my GED, I then had to take 30 credits at a community college before I could enroll at the University of Oregon because they said they can't accept me without a transcript. So, the plan had several steps. So the first one was get a release from compulsory education, take the GED, enroll in community college, pass the classes. I got 30 credits with the only class I didn't get an A in was physics. I got
Hmm.
a I got a B minus in physics because I didn't go to high school. I had no high school physics to back me up. It was my first physics class,
Wow.
and I got a, you know, so yeah, I had a plan. So have a plan is what I would say. Have a plan, stick to the plan. But what I would say that I didn't do is find support. So if you don't have support within your family, within your immediate relatives, find some, and I'm not talking financial support. I'm talking emotional support. I'm
Mm.
talking mental support because I did it all 100% on my own on sheer spite and determination. I don't recommend that. Not everyone's going to have that degree of, you know. So I would definitely say have a plan and get support and stick to the plan.
Wow. That makes perfect sense. So then, what would you whisper to Evelyn when she first started out on that journey of seeking the going away to college?
I would say to her, it's going to end better than you think it's going to end.
Wow.
So don't give
Wow.
up.
Wow. Well, thank you. Thank you, Evelyn. You've shared some profound, so many nuggets here. I've written some notes here, but I think the one that stands out the most is having a plan and
Yep,
sticking to it. Having a plan and sticking to it, and finding support,
yep,
uh, not just financial support, but mental and spiritual
yep.
support
And
as well.
emotional. Yep. Somebody to cheer you on, somebody to tell you, somebody who has one thing that I have learned as I've gotten older, I'm in my 50s, is that there are few things as valuable as the long view. And I have 3 daughters of my own. And when they come to me and ask me questions or ask me for advice, whatever, and I just I tell them, and I can see that they're not getting it. And I'm just kind of like, well, you'll understand. As my mother used to tell me, when you get older, you'll understand. Right. And so the long view of having what I mean by that is having been where they are and gone through that challenge that they're facing and come out the other side. That gives you the long view.
Yes.
Right. And so, yeah, it's about
Right.
there's nothing as valuable as the long knowing that as snarly as things might appear, they almost always work out. You just don't really know in the beginning, you don't know how they're going to work out. And, what is that acronym of how? Help on the way is how, right?
Right.
So if you trust that higher power that knows the end from the beginning, you don't know the end from the beginning. You can't see beyond your headlights. It's like
Right.
driving in a fog. You can't see beyond your headlights, but you just keep driving because you can kind of see that yellow line. You just keep driving. But there is something that's guiding you, that knows the end from the beginning. And you have to trust that, and you're fine.
Well, thank you so much, Evelyn, for sharing your courage story with us today here on Courage Conversations.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you. And so I wanted to say to everyone watching, especially our ladies, our women over 50, if you find yourself faced with decisions or you feel stuck in making that decision, don't hesitate to reach out. You'll find a link below to walk you through that. Thank you.